Hello, and welcome to In Your Bible. I'm your host, George W. Green. Jesus crucified and buried on Wednesday. This is part one. I imagine most of you Christians listening have only heard of a Friday crucifixion. I understand that. I was taught the same way as a youngster, and even as an older person, I was always taught that. It didn't make sense to me, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. All right, so I think I have it figured out, and I want to share it with you. Okay, so let's start with before you do anything, whatever you believe about the day Jesus died, it's not a reason to start a new religion, not a reason to start a new branch of Christianity. You know, we're not going to start the Jesus Wednesday church or the Jesus Thursday church or the Jesus Friday church. Shouldn't be doing that. All right. I will present to you data, and then you need to decide. You need to pray about the information I share and see if you agree with it or not. All right. What you believe about it is up to you. Okay. So first thing, we need to understand that the Jewish calendar was different than what we're used to. All right. There. Let me show you. This is a blank Jewish calendar. And you notice at the bottom I say first month of the year, all right? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Nisan, possibly? The first month of the year. The line at the top, you see the dark and then the light. That's one calendar day, because the Jewish calendar day starts and ends at sunset. Not at 6 p.m., starts and ends at sunset. All right? So till the next sunset, that's 24 hours, okay? And then the next one, that's another 24 hours, all right? Starts and ends at sunset. See, we've got to think a little different in order to follow along, all right? And I'll try to lead you. Down at the bottom, you see some numbers. Those will be calendar days, okay? Those are not the calendar days we'll be working with. I just want to show you what the spaces are set to be used for. Let's start at a place where we can all agree. The Gospels, you and me, we can all agree. All four Gospel writers agree that Jesus was crucified on Preparation Day. Right? I'm not going to read each one of these verses, but you can take a look at it and look back for yourself and write it down later. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and then John gives us a little more detail, but we'll get into that detail a little later. So there should be no problem with when Jesus was crucified and buried. It was on Preparation Day. That's not the issue. The issue is, when was Preparation Day? I understand some of you already have determined that you know when Preparation Day was. It was the day before the regular weekly Sabbath. I'll show you that that is not the case. That is not how that works, okay? So this is what we know so far. Preparation Day, all right, was the day Jesus was crucified and buried. This is blank down here. We don't know the calendar date of that. Not yet. We're going to walk through here and see some dates coming up. Now, before we go any further on the calendar, I need to tell you about some special days. The first special day I need to tell you about is Passover. Now, when I say special, the Bible uses the term holy convocation, appointed feast, or even a Sabbath. All right? The first one I want to tell you about, like I said, is Passover. You'll find that in Leviticus 23:4, actually in verse 5, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight. Twilight, the start of the day, is the Lord's Passover. All right? So that would look like this. I'm just placing this on the map or on the calendar any place, all right, because we don't know where in the week it belongs at this point. We know that Passover is the 14th, all right? And don't lose track of this, that the Jewish calendar day starts and ends at sunset. All right, we got to think different as we walk through this. The next day I want to tell you about is it's a holy convocation, appointed feast, or Sabbath, the terms that are used for these days. The first day and last day of the 7-day feast of unleavened bread. We'll find that in Leviticus 24:6. And on the 15th day of the same month, okay, is a feast of unleavened bread to the Lord. All right, I'll let you read the rest of that. Here's what that would look like on the calendar. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, all right, this period of time right here, and we can see the calendar day is the 15th, all right? We know now, those 2 days are always together. Every year, all right, in the first month of the year, those 2 days are always together. All right, keep that in mind. Let's move on. Let's find another place where all the gospel writers agree. All the gospel writers agree that the women went to the tomb early on the first day of the week, and that the tomb was empty. I'm not going to read those. You can look at those. Matthew 28, Mark 16:1, Luke 24:1, and John chapter 20, verse 1. All of them say that the women went to the tomb early on the first day of the week. So we should be all in agreement there. I'm not going to put that on the calendar yet. We need to talk about some other things. A lot of you have been taught that Jesus ate the Passover meal, right? And the Passover meal would be when? On Passover. And these verses kind of seems like maybe Jesus ate the Passover meal. And the first one I want to share with you is Matthew chapter 26, verse 17, all the way to verse 19. Excuse me. Jesus gave them instructions, and the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. All right. Mark also says something that makes it seem like Jesus ate the Passover in Mark chapter 14 and verse 12. The question was, where will you have us go and prepare for you to eat the Passover? All right, that was their question. Definitely talking about preparation for the Passover. All right. Luke is in a similar way. In verse 8, so Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, go and prepare the Passover for us, that we may eat it. All right. In Luke 22:13, they went and found it just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover. Now, I doubt if many of you have heard this before. The preparation for the Passover took multiple days, starting on the 10th of the month. Multiple days. How many days, Brother Green? Let's look in your Bible at Exodus 12:3. It'll tell you, tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month, every man shall take a lamb. All right, and then it goes on to verse 6. You keep it until the 14th. So this was teaching about what they needed to do for the Passover. So from the 10th to the 14th is what we're talking about. That was preparation time for the Passover. Since the preparation for the Passover started on the 10th, preparing for the Passover meal does not mean that it was the next meal eaten. Doesn't mean that. Preparation for Passover started on the 10th, and you still had to prepare other normal meals on the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. All right? These meals had to be prepared and eaten while preparations were still going on for the Passover. Preparations for Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread required diligent cleaning to ensure no leaven was anywhere in the house. Leaven is one of the agents, one of the products you would put into flour, okay, to make the bread rise. All right, that's the purpose of leaven. So, what have we just learned? Let me sum it up for you. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all indicate that the disciples certainly started preparing the Passover meal. All four Gospels agree that Jesus and the disciples ate a meal. They're in agreement with that. However, none of the New Testament writers, that means gospel and epistles, all of that, okay, none of the New Testament writers say that Jesus ate the Passover meal. It's not in there. You want to look it up? I understand. None of them say that Jesus ate the Passover meal. All of us have heard many a sermon how Jesus ate the Passover meal, but those are sermons. That isn't what you find in your Bible. I'll continue this in part 2. Thank you for joining me.